Judge Hershey, Sweet Justice, written by Neil Gaiman and read by Sam Morgan. The old man had promised Jamie some sugar. All Jamie had to do was meet him at the alleyway under Stephen King Park. Jamie, who at 7 considered himself quite old enough to cope with strange old men, wandered down there. He had hidden a kitchen laser knife in his sock in case the old man started to turn nasty, and he had stolen a container from his mother's bedroom cabinet in case the old man came up with the stuff. The old man, that was all the name he seemed to have, had lurked in the underpass for years, a raddled, grizzled old wreck with raw red eyes that stared nastily out of a dirt-etched face. If that was what sugar did to you, Jamie wasn't sure he wanted it. But the old man was undoubtedly an addict, while Jamie just wanted to try some sugar, just one, just to see what it was like. He knew he'd be able to cope. The old man was standing in the shadows of the underpass, leaning by the wall, his mouldering coat seemingly part of the garbage mound beside him. He was standing perfectly still. "I'm here," hissed Jamie 10 paces away. You didn't get too close to the old man unless you had to. The smell was even worse than the garbage. The derelict said nothing, made no movement, just stared ahead with dry, papery eyes. "I said, I'm here. You said you'd had something for me?" Something scared Jamie. Perhaps it was the rustling, a strange clicking and chittering that seemed to emanate from the figure of the old man. Perhaps it was just his unnatural lack of movement. The boy grabbed an empty synth-beat can from the garbage pile, flung it at the old man, and turned on his heel and prepared to run. There was the sound of soft tearing as the can hit the still figure and sunk in. The old man's eyes jerked open, and as Jamie watched, 2 heavy black tears trickled down the old man's cheeks. Or at least the boy thought they were tears, until they scuttled on tiny insect legs into the old man's hair. Then Jamie started screaming. When Judge Hershey found him a quarter of an hour later, he was still standing there, staring at an old overcoat. Hershey examined it. It contained the paper shell of what had once been a human being and a number of stunted black spiders. The old man was the 3rd sugar user she had found like that on Saturday, and she didn't like it at all. Not one bit. It had taken 8 hours to get clearance. 8 hours during which Hershey prowled the Grand Hall of Justice corridors, inspected her equipment, reviewed the case files, and waited. She was quite prepared to verbally dissect anyone who so much as said hello, but no one did, which simply made her even more irritable. She thought of the perps vanishing into Britsit like spiders scuttling into a garbage pile, and her lips tightened. It was almost midnight when Chief Judge Magruder called her in. "We've spoken to Britsit's Chief Judge and Intercept. And they want to talk to you, Hershey." Hershey flicked the hair out of her eyes impatiently. Interdep was an international justice cadre responsible for exchanging information, techniques, and tip-offs. In reality, it was a shadowy organisation of senior judges from around the world who seemed to operate with total autonomy. It was rumoured that among Interdep's more dubious activities were running teams of independent assassins known as culling crews, although anyone who ever tried to prove this seemed to suffer an unfortunate accident. The thought of talking to Interdep would have given Hershey a second of apprehension in the past. Now she thought of spiders, and a cold flame of anger burned inside her. She sat down opposite a bank of vid screens and said, "Go ahead." The screens came to life. The top screen showed about half a dozen shadowy figures in helmets and uniforms of as many designs. Hershey could not make out any faces. The bottom screen showed a large man with a huge moon-like face, a bronze lion on his shoulder, and a star-shaped beauty mark on his chin. He was first to speak. "So you want to come to Britsit, eh, Judge Hershey?" His accent was soft and strange. "Yes, sir." "Nobody tell you we've got judges of our own over here?" "I know that, sir." "Don't you think we're capable of finding one little sugar dealer?" Hershey took a deep breath. "That's not the issue anymore, sir. Have you looked at the records in this case?" One of the figures on the top screen broke in. "We've seen the records, Judge Hershey. What we query is the need for your involvement. Clute will undoubtedly be tracked down by the Britsit judges." "With respect, sir," broke in Hershey. "This is my case. I broke it. I had Clute identified, and I was there when those people started to... She paused. I think this is big. I think this could be a matter of planetary security, and there is nowhere that crummy little punk can hide, be it Britsit or anywhere, that I can't track him down and beat the truth from his lousy little hide. Does that answer your question, sir? But the top screen had gone blank. The Britsit chief judge nodded at her. Then his screen blanked out as well. Hershey looked over at Magruder. Well, trip was agreed in principle half an hour ago, but they wanted to get a look at you first. Get on your bike, Hershey. You're going to Britsit. Hershey was out of the room before the chief judge had finished the sentence. Several hours later, Hershey saw the silver lines of Britsit ahead as they loomed out of the neon night ahead in the Atlantic Tunnel. A face flickered onto her lawmaster's communicator.
Judge Hershey, this is Judge Fennel, but welcome to Britsit territory. I'm half a click ahead of you. Lock your lawmaster to mine and follow me to the new Old Bailey.
The what?
Our Justice Department headquarters.
Oh. She put her bike onto auto and followed the British judge down to Britsit Skidway, amazed how thin they were. How did traffic cope in such conditions? 6-lane highways, barely room to move. Fennel's face reappeared on the screen.
Been to Britsit before?
Once, replied Hershey, in a tone that indicated once was more than enough.
I've never been to Mega City 1 yet. I did a few shifts on the Joint Jurisdiction Tunnel Board at Atlantis. Worked with a few Mega City 1 judges. You know Dredd?
Yeah.
Quite a judge. Impressive sort of bloke.
Bloke?
Oh, chap. Man. Person.
I see, yes, he is, sighed Hershey under her breath. Only hours from home. You would have thought they could speak English.
Jolly good,
said Judge Fennel. They pulled up in front of New Old Bailey, a bizarre mix of old architecture that had been updated and extended upwards at least half a dozen times. It was impressive compared to the blocks around it, few of them half the size of a Mega City 1 block, but Hershey found herself comparing it to the Grand Hall of Justice, and that made it seem small and quaint. She climbed off her bike and strode up the steps to the waiting Judge Fennel. He was a giant of a man, with a black velvet star stuck on chin. Hershey removed her helmet and shook out her hair. Fennel's jaw dropped, and he grinned. Gosh, nobody told me you were going to be so attractive. I can see this is going to be a pleasure. Hershey had perfected a number of stares over the years on the streets for dealing with anyone who tried to treat her as anything other than a judge. They ranged from pitying up to chilling through to full Arctic. Now she let loose with a look that was positively subpolar. Fennel gave an involuntary shiver and looked away. He tried to smile once more, but his facial muscles seemed to have forgotten how. Hershey walked into the New Old Bailey, Fennel following behind. They travelled up a turbo lift in silence until Hershey said, That thing in your chin, what's it for? It's a beauty patch. They're very fashionable, Inbrit said. A judge, quoted Hershey from memory, should be clean, upright and stern. No more. We are not a beauty contest. Judge's manual? Dredd. Oh. Fennel fell silent again. Britsit Chief Judge Jones was sitting in a large easy chair when Hershey entered his office. He looked up and gave her a slightly cold look, which produced a sensation not unlike a fridge door being left open, and stood by his desk. We've never had anything like this before, lass, said Jones. I hope we're all going to get along. Hershey raised an eyebrow. You know who I'm looking for. Clute. Severlin Clute. He's a small-time Britsit sugar dealer. He's been positively ID'd as the man who sold each of the victims their sugar. By the time we'd identified him, he'd taken the zoom back here. Whatever he's selling, it isn't sugar. It looks pure white, apparently tastes like the stuff, but it's deadly and probably alien. I want to take him back to Mega City 1. I want his source, whatever it is, put out of action for good. On that basis, I need your full cooperation. Jones got up and walked to a large window, staring out at the twinkling lights of Britsit. I take it we'll get that cooperation, sir? Jones didn't look at her. Well, he said finally, you do and you don't. It's not that we don't want to give you all the help we can, but you're a Mega City 1 judge, and this is Britsit. We do things differently here. I'm assigning you to Judge Fennel. You could work together, use Brit facilities. But while you're here, you take orders from Fennel, and from me, and none of this charging into places, lawgiver blazing, and upsetting our citizens. You aren't in Megacity 1 now, lass. I can see that, said Hershey. Right then, that's all that needs to be said. Good luck, just remember, added Jones. We've got a saying over here. Softly, softly, catchy perp. Good morning, Judge Hershey. Clute had done 5 years in an ISO cube when he was 20. The hologram of him taken upon release showed a weaselly little man, prematurely balding, with cherubic lips. Since then, he'd been on the move. Servalan Clute was one of the half-dozen names he'd used, a minor confidence man and compulsive liar who had informed on the Britsit underworld just enough to stay out of the cubes. No record of any more sugar dealing until 6 weeks before he'd quit his job handling transit passengers at the Britsit spaceport, abandoned his conab and went underground. There were no leads to his current whereabouts. Hershey flung the case files to the other side of the hotel room and sat in a quiet fury of frustration. After several moments seething, she paged Fennel on his radiocom. Hershey here. Got anything?
Afraid not. Got some people in plain clothes twisting a few arms for info. I'll contact you as soon as we get anything.
Hershey sighed heavily. I can't sit here forever. I'll go nuts.
I'll call you as soon as there's any word. In the meantime, why don't you just watch the box?
Huh?
The television, the Tri-D. Fennel out.
Why couldn't the man speak English? Hershey asked herself for the 5th time today and activated the Tri-D unit in her room, flicking from channel to channel. Less than 2 minutes viewing nearly persuaded her to go off the nearest broadcast centre and arrest a lot of them. Instead, she switched the set off. A soothing voice issued from the deactivated viewer. Please support your local industry through enforced obsolescence. Destroy your Tri-D unit now. Hershey raised an eyebrow, thought for a moment, then gave the viewer a quick burst of armour piercing from her lawgiver. It exploded with a satisfying blaze of pyrotechnics. Her radiocom burst into life.
Hershey, Fennel, what's that noise? Sounded like gunfire.
Just the Tri-D, she explained.
Sounded so real. Anyway, one of our plainclothes has a lead. Meet you by the lobby.
As Hershey left the room, a Tri-D set slid up from a fresh cavity in the wall to replace the one that had just been destroyed. There was another judge waiting with Fennel in the lobby, whom Hershey immediately recognised. He'd been to Megacity 1 on an investigation a few months before, and his unorthodox methods and disdain for procedure and authority had marked him out as trouble. As always, Armitage was clad in a battered turquoise trenchcoat with a mixture of black and white shirt and trousers underneath. His grey and goatee beard was now nearly pure white. Armitage, grimaced Hershey. Fennel smiled, surprised. You two know each other? Armitage just grunted before bringing Hershey's attention to the middle-aged woman with the runny nose cowering nearby. Got something you want to tell a nice judge? When his prisoner didn't respond, Armitage gave her arm an unnecessarily harsh twist, stretching tendon and bone close to breaking point. Sorry, you'll just have to speak a bit louder. I don't think she heard you. Ow! Cried out the woman, quite terrified, her eyes wild with fear and longing and need. A sugar addict, Hershey surmised. All I know is that Clute's been hanging around Encino Morricone block in the Limehouse district. I bought some stuff off him yesterday. You used it yet? Demanded Hershey. Another twist of the arm, the sound of bones grinding together. Ow! No, I was just saving it for a cup of tea. There's a bloke I know said I could get me some tea bags my way. You know what I mean? Oh dear, Child Armitage cheerfully. Tea as well. No end to your vices, is there? He propelled the woman onto the floor with a shove before turning back to Hershey and Fennel. Is that what you need to know? Cheers, replied Fennel. Both he and Hershey were already running for the street exit. Typical, no gratitude, grumbled Armitage. Outside, the 2 uniformed judges were gunning their bikes into action. Limehouse? Asked Hershey. An old part of Britsit, dating back to the bad old London Dockland days, explained Fennel. Follow me. They'd caught Clute vomiting outside the basement entrance to Encino Morricone block. The perp was not feeling very well and could put up no fight. It didn't take much encouragement for him to start talking. The sugar was in the basement, but the door had an eye lock keyed to his retina pattern. They'd have to take him with them. Terriff, scowled Hershey, and dragged the whimpering Clute along with them. A quick shove of Clute's face against the retina scanner deactivated the deadbolt, and the 2 judges prepared to go in. I'll wait out here. I ain't feeling too well, protested the perp. Oh no, you come with us. insisted Hershey as Fennel kicked the door in. The trio stepped into the basement chamber. Inside, the sweet, sickly smell of sugar was so strong it nearly knocked Hershey out. The huge room was piled high with white crystals, mountains of sugar. The smell was so sweet she wanted to throw herself onto the ground and bury her face in it. Fennel was feeling it too. She could tell by the sudden weakness in his movements. Of course. "Respirators down!" she shouted, and snapped down her own from the top of her helmet. Fennel followed her lead.
Sweet Jovus, the smell!
Echoed his voice in her helmet comms unit.
This stuff isn't sugar,
replied Hershey.
We've known that all along, but where did it come from?
Beside her, Clute had been unable to resist the scent and was lapping at the white crystals. Then the thing came over the white hill. It was enormous, like a giant spider, nearly 2 meters across, its hairy, bulbous body supported by 7 legs. A network of eyes sat atop a pair of hairy mandibles. Behind it, a stream of white crystals trickled out of its body. Fennel brought up his lawgiver to fire, but Hershey prevented him.
Don't shoot. It's intelligent. An alien life form. A Shakashira. Non-aggressive. I saw one years ago when I was off-planet. This one looks sick. You better call for a truck to move it. A medic trained in alien physiognomy. And the diplomats. Someone with training to handle aliens.
While the Britsit judge began making calls, Hershey approached the spider creature gently. Her allspeak was rusty, but she managed.
You ill. Make better soon.
The cleanup squad arrived soon and transported the spider creature away. Clute was left, lying by the sugar mountain. Hershey began to interrogate him, trying to put together the last few pieces of the puzzle. Let me guess how this went. You were working at a spaceport when you saw the aliens trickling sugar behind it, so you kidnapped it, brought it down here, and have been selling the stuff she's been excreting at a premium, right? Thought it was sugar. Even went on a selling trip to Megacity 1 to set up some new sales lines. There must have been nearly 20 million creds worth here. Clute just nodded, white crystals sticking to his sweat-soaked forehead. But you were wrong, creep. This stuff isn't sugar. It's eggs. Alien eggs. And that's how the creature breeds. They lay this stuff, dumb animals eat it, then the eggs hatch inside the animals and consume the host from within. You're responsible for the deaths of dozens of citizens. Clute didn't respond. His face seemed waxen, almost papery. Something pulsed in his cheek. Hershey stepped back, repulsed. You've been sampling the merchandise, Clute. The skin of Clute's face tore open. Dozens of tiny spiders began to pour out. Fennel came back into the basement. How's the prisoner? Hershey looked down at the paper-like husk that had once been the body of Sir Clute. He's gone to pieces.